Now picture something sitting on a supermarket shelf. Lion milk, or tiger milk, or maybe wolf milk. Suddenly, it feels wrong. Most people assume predator milk must be dangerous. After all, predators spend their lives hunting, tearing apart prey, and eating raw meat. Surely their milk can't belong on a breakfast table. It sounds logical, but it's built on the wrong assumption. A lion doesn't turn yesterday's zebra into milk. A wolf doesn't produce poison for her pups. Like every other mammal, predators make milk for one simple reason: to feed their young. So, if predator milk is real, why has almost nobody in history tried to drink it? The answer has surprisingly little to do with milk itself. It begins with a much bigger question. Why did humans choose only a handful of animals to build civilization around? When people hear predator milk, they usually imagine something contaminated. Predators eat raw meat. Some even feed on sick or dead animals. It's easy to assume that whatever goes into the animal must somehow come back out through its milk. Biology doesn't work that way. Milk is produced inside specialized mammary glands, not directly from food sitting in the stomach. Nutrients are processed through the mother's bloodstream before being assembled into milk containing fats, proteins, sugars, vitamins, minerals, and immune compounds designed to nourish her offspring. The mother's diet can change the exact composition, but it doesn't magically make the milk poisonous. That pattern appears across mammals. A whale, a bear, a house cat, and a cow all produce milk through remarkably similar biological processes. What changes is the recipe, not the purpose. Each species evolves milk that matches the needs of its own young. That small detail completely changes the discussion. The real question is no longer whether predators can produce milk. Clearly they can. The better question is why humans almost completely ignored it while building farms, villages, and eventually entire civilizations. To answer that, you have to imagine standing thousands of years ago, surrounded by hundreds of different mammals. Every one of them can feed its babies. Yet humans chose only a tiny handful to feed themselves. That wasn't an accident. It was the beginning of one of the most successful partnerships in history, and milk was only a small part of it. Picture an early farming community thousands of years ago. At sunrise, a shepherd walks toward a herd of goats. The animals stay together. They recognize people. Many have already spent generations living alongside humans. Now replace those goats with a pride of lions. The entire system falls apart before anyone even thinks about collecting milk. This is the mistake most people make. They focus on the final product instead of everything required to produce it. Milk doesn't come from wild animals. It comes from long-term relationships between humans and animals. The first dairy species weren't chosen because they had milk. They were chosen because they could live near people, reproduce under human care, and tolerate daily handling without constantly escaping or attacking. Most predators fail every one of those tests. Large carnivores evolve to defend territory, compete with rivals, and hunt independently. Those traits make them incredibly successful in the wild, but they make poor livestock. Even smaller predators create problems. A domestic cat can become fiercely protective while nursing her kittens. Scale that behavior up to wolves, hyenas, or lions, and collecting milk quickly becomes a dangerous job with very little reward. But behavior wasn't the only obstacle. Even if every predator suddenly became calm enough to handle, another problem would remain. How much milk could they actually provide? Every glass of cow's milk tells the story of a calf. Every drop of lion's milk tells the story of a cub. Milk isn't a universal recipe. It's an evolutionary solution tailored to each species. A calf feeds often while following its mother across open grasslands. A lion cub spends its first weeks hidden in a den, waiting for a mother that may be away hunting for hours. Those different lifestyles produce different milk. Studies comparing mammals show that many carnivores produce milk richer in fat and protein than grazing animals. Their young grow quickly and often go longer between feedings, so concentrated nutrition makes sense. That doesn't mean predator milk is better. It simply means it's designed for a different job. The same pattern appears throughout nature. Seal pups receive extremely rich milk to build insulation before entering icy water. Rabbit mothers nurse only briefly each day, so their milk is highly concentrated. Human milk contains relatively more lactose, supporting the long period of brain development that defines our species. Milk reflects what a baby needs, not what humans prefer. And there's another important detail. Predators don't produce much of it. That limitation turns out to be just as important as the milk itself. Suppose you could safely milk a lioness. How much milk would you actually get? Most people never ask that question because modern supermarkets make milk seem endless. Shelves are packed with bottles, cheese, butter, yogurt, and cream, creating the impression that milk is naturally abundant. It isn't. Modern dairy cattle produce remarkable amounts of milk because humans spent thousands of years selectively breeding animals that produce far more than their calves need. That partnership gradually transformed cattle into one of the most productive livestock species on Earth. Wild predators followed a completely different path. They produce only enough milk to raise their own young. Producing milk requires enormous amounts of energy, water, and nutrients. From an evolutionary perspective, creating a large surplus offers no advantage if every drop already has a purpose. For a lioness, milk exists to raise cubs, not to fill buckets. That difference changes the entire calculation. Even if collecting predator milk were perfectly safe, every animal would provide only a small amount for a limited period. Expanding that into a reliable dairy industry would require countless animals while producing surprisingly little milk. The problem wasn't the recipe, it was the scale. And once humans started comparing different animals, another obstacle became impossible to ignore. Before predators can produce milk, they first have to be fed. Imagine feeding a cow. You open a gate, and it spends the day turning grass into energy. Now, imagine feeding a tiger. The tiger doesn't eat grass. It eats animals that ate grass. That single extra step changes everything. Energy is lost every time it moves up the food chain. Plants capture sunlight. Herbivores convert part of that energy into muscle, fat, and milk. Carnivores survive by eating herbivores, but only a fraction of the original energy reaches them. That's why healthy ecosystems always support many grazing animals, but relatively few top predators. There simply isn't enough energy to maintain large populations of hunters. Now, apply that rule to dairy farming. To produce predator milk, you first need huge numbers of prey animals. Those prey animals also need land, water, and food before they can support the predators. The entire system becomes increasingly inefficient. Meanwhile, cattle skip that extra step by converting plants that humans can't digest into products that humans can use. From an agricultural perspective, the choice becomes obvious. Predator milk wasn't rejected because it was strange. It was rejected because the entire production system demanded far more resources while delivering far less in return. And even if food were unlimited, one final obstacle would still remain. Would predators ever allow humans close enough to milk them? Imagine walking into a barn before sunrise. The animals barely look up. They've lived alongside humans for generations. They recognize familiar voices, routines, and feeding times. Now replace those cows with wolves, or leopards, or lions. Before anyone reaches for a bucket, the entire situation changes. This is where domestication becomes the real story. People often think domestication simply means making an animal friendly. In reality, it means changing a species over many generations. Animals must reproduce under human care, tolerate close contact, and remain predictable enough to become part of everyday life. Cattle, sheep, and goats gradually developed those traits through thousands of years of selective breeding. Predators evolved for the opposite purpose. A lion survives by defending territory, competing with rivals, and protecting its cubs. A wolf depends on caution, teamwork, and strong parental instincts. Those behaviors are perfect for surviving in the wild, but they create constant problems for farming. A nursing predator isn't being aggressive because something went wrong. It's behaving exactly as evolution intended. By this point, the answer becomes clear. Predator milk wasn't rejected because it was poisonous. It wasn't rejected because humans never thought about it. Humans rejected the entire system long before the milk ever mattered. Predators required expensive food, produced limited milk, resisted handling, and offered few of the additional benefits that made cattle, goats, and sheep so valuable. Those animals didn't just provide milk, they also supplied meat, leather, wool, labor, transportation, or manure, becoming part of an entire agricultural economy. Predators never fit into that system. History rarely chooses the most unusual idea. It usually chooses the one that solves the most problems with the fewest resources. That's why your refrigerator contains milk from only a handful of species, even though hundreds of mammals produce it. The next time you pour a glass of milk, remember that you're not just looking at a biological product. You're looking at thousands of years of evolution, domestication, and human decision-making, all working together to create one surprisingly ordinary drink. If you enjoy documentaries that uncover the hidden logic behind everyday things, consider subscribing.